Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Not Your Average CEO Lifeline. Today, we are talking all things pricing, alchemy, and financial secrets. I have expert and special guest Kendall Summerhawk with us. Kendall, welcome. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to talk about this topic. Um, it's so funny. Of all the questions you can ask, this is the hardest question to answer. I've been in business over 22 years. In the coaching space, been a leader in the coaching space for a very long time. I am a money feminist. And what that means is that my vision is to create a world where women hold genuine financial power, genuine power with money. Because money is power, money is choice, and it's statistically proven that the world changes for the better when women have money. And I'm the leader of the Money Coach School. We have two signature certification trainings through the school, the Sacred Money Archetypes and the Money Breakthrough Business Coach certification trainings. And also, we just launched my podcast, the Money Coach School podcast, just like 4 or 5 months ago. So super, super excited about that. And I live in Tucson, Arizona. I have horses. I work from home, and my family works with me in my business. And that's pretty much in a nutshell who I am. I'm all things money and horses and women in empowerment. You asked me about those, I am your girl.
I love it. I will try to stick to not asking you about horses because my daughter is very obsessed with horses as well. But I will stick to asking you about practical tips you can give our listeners to start out on pricing.
Yeah, I think that the place to start is really looking at the biggest mistake that women in business for themselves make about pricing. And, this is a question I can answer for the next, do a 3 or 4 hour workshop on. So I'll keep it contained here. But the biggest mistake is, regardless of what kind of a service your business is in, or even product as well. I mean, I really specialize in service-based businesses, but the mistake is thinking that, oh, I, as that service provider, or my team, or whoever's doing the work, are going to spend X amount of time, either X amount of time working on behalf of the client, or we're working directly with the client or preparing, and then using that as the jumping off place to create their pricing. And that is a huge, huge mistake. It's really short-sighted. I mean, I understand why people do that, but it's just not the right thing to do. And so what you want to do instead is, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but I want to take it a little deeper. What you want to do instead is always price on what the value of the results are for your clients. So what the value of the results are. But you don't want to stop there. And the place to take this deeper is to say, and I'm going to use the example of coaching, since I've been in the coaching industry for a long time. So I'll just use that as one easy example, is to say, oh, I'm going to work with a client for 6 months. And so during that time, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Therefore, the value is X. And that's, again, very short-sighted, because when I say look at the value of the results, I'm not talking about just during the time period you're working with your client. I want you to extend your thinking like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years beyond the work that you're doing with the client. What are those results? Those timeframes going forward, 1, 2, 3, even 5 years, and not just during the time period you're actually working with clients. And I think when you do that, well, I know that when you do that, what's going to happen is that you might have to stretch for the answers and do a little research and digging and kind of projecting forward, envisioning yourself forward as the client. But what's going to happen is you're going to see this compounding effect of the work that you do, the compounding effect. And that's the value that I'm talking about, is that compounding effect. So that's where you want to look and to say, wow, this, and I'll make up some numbers here, this $5,000 service, actually the compounding effect is worth several $100,000 for my client, just in terms of monetary transformation, but also what about their time? What about their relationships in their workplace with their business, or their relationships at home? What about their trajectory towards reaching their goals and their vision? So you want to look at that not only from that longer time frame, but also how your work is impacting all these facets of your client's life.
I don't think a lot of people take that secondary step to their vision, right? To their client, put themselves in their client's shoes. They're always just thinking this is the price and that's it. Um, Taking that second step requires you to know you need to take that second step, which I don't think a lot of people put front of mind when they're talking about their pricing.
They don't, but you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, seven figures relying on you taking that second step. I mean, again, let's apply it to each of us as a business owner. When we take that step for ourselves, what's the compounding effect of that? And I think that the opposite, when we go back to the opposite of saying, oh, I'm just going to base it on time, I'm spending X amount of time, so what's that worth? That's a very transactional way of thinking. It's a very masculine way, kind of very old school way of thinking. And that's not how women operate at all in the world. Women, we are not by nature transactional in our relationships. So why would we use a transactional methodology for pricing, right? It doesn't work. So I think that that this is just one of the ways that the modern woman entrepreneur can look at pricing her services. And just to be clear, I'm not saying, oh, my $5,000 service over the next few years for my client's going to be worth $300,000. Therefore, I'm going to charge $300,000. That's not the point here. But the point is, are you still going to charge $5,000? Maybe, maybe not. You might be charging more. Regardless of where you end up with your number, what's going to happen, and let's say you do stick with the 5,000, you're going to be able to sell that 5,000 all day long in every conversation, everywhere, because the 5,000 investment is worth potentially 300,000 for your client. Do you know what I mean? So it gives you this incredible sense of spaciousness and freedom and confidence and clarity to say, oh my God, people, this is like, for $5,000, you're going to get this, and you're going to be so lit up and excited about that you're going to make sales a lot more easily.
Yes. So, and for those in our audience who don't know, I worked with Kendall about 12 or 13 years ago in starting my business, and certainly all around money and mindset and emotions. And one thing that I learned that I still use today is how emotional money can be. And something that Kendall said 100 years ago that will always stick with me is how we do money is how we do everything. And I'd love to know, Kendall, for our audience, what you can share with them about how we can shift our emotions when it pertains to money, because that's something that's so important.
It is. Thank you for asking. There's 100 different ways that I could give you to shift your emotions around money. It isn't just one, magic bullet here. I think that number one is first to understand your money personality. So I'm the creator of the Sacred Money Archetypes. And this understanding your money type, there are 8 money archetypes, understanding your top 3, we pay attention to your top 3 highest scoring archetypes. And I have a free quiz. We can put that link in the show notes there. But understanding what your money archetypes are, in other words, your money personality, that is huge. Because, for example, if you're a romantic and you're trying to run your business like me, who's a ruler, you're going to be in pain and misery and, struggle. It's not going to work. And likewise, for me as a ruler, if I stopped paying attention to money and started running my business like a connector, which is one of the other archetypes, I would be, I don't know how I'd get out of bed every morning. I would be so filled with anxiety. So I think that's number one, is to understand your money type so that you're not fighting yourself, you're not blaming yourself, you're not creating a lot of negative emotions. I think the other thing that you can do is to understand that money is emotion. Absolutely. People always say, oh, money is energy, and people have been saying that for decades. And it's not that I agree or disagree with that. For some reason, that phrase never landed for me. I thought, okay, it's energy. Well, big deal. What am I supposed to do with that? But when I realized, wait a second, money is actually emotion. And when you realize money is emotion, it's like, oh, okay, now I know what to do. I know some things I can work with that. So I think when you realize that money is emotion and money is about a relationship, and certainly as adults, we're going to have a relationship with money till our dying day. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that we don't think about money in some way, shape, or form. So it is a relationship. It's a vital relationship in our human experience. So I think the second thing you can do besides learning your archetypes is to get really clear on your values, on your money values. And like most things, nobody teaches it like I do. I think a lot of people say, oh, my values are, saving or family or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's not actually really it. I think those are kind of surface easy answers. It's really looking at, and you can decide what your values are. This doesn't have to be inherent. It's not, values are not something you're necessarily born with. You can actually choose for this season of your life. You can choose what values you want to embody and really step fully into. So for example, one of mine, and I like to have like 3 or 4 values. One of mine is money peace, having peace with money. And so by choosing to have money peace, and yes, I'm a saver and I love making money. And I mean, I've made almost just shy of $30 million since 2008. So, and that's a lot of money to have made. But money peace, just by adopting that, I'm going to start making decisions very differently about money, about what my business looks like. This is all part of being a CEO too, right? And not your average CEO. Decisions that come from your values, that are in alignment with your values and not against yourself. So I think that's another piece that's super important to help get into alignment. You get your emotions into alignment and come into peace with your emotions with money.
Yes. And yeah, just shifting a little bit, that's all great. And I know we only have you for half an hour and you have so much valuable information. So I want to try to get to everything. What steps can our audience take when they are having courageous conversations about money? What would some practical tips and steps for them to take be?
Right, really practical. Let me give you a few steps. Number one, you have to breathe. So most of the time when women have conversations around money, really anybody, but women especially, is they get themselves in a whole tangle. There's this whole tangle. They get anxious or they get angry or they're defensive. It's like, why are you going into the money conversation in the first place? Typically, it's not a proactive situation. It's more of a reactive, like something happened, a client didn't pay, or your spouse or partner is wanting to spend a bunch of money or doesn't want you spending money. There's all kinds of reasons why, but it's usually a fairly, on an emotional heat scale, it rates pretty high of emotional heat is what I like to say. So the first thing you have to do is you have to breathe. You have to exhale. You have to say, wait a second, let me get myself centered first. You cannot go into a money conversation all hot and bothered. You really can't. It's not, well, you can, but it's just not going to be a successful conversation. The second thing is that you want to get clear before you start the conversation. You want to get really clear on what it is that you want. What is your outcome from the conversation? And that means, and for quite a few women, this can be very challenging because they want to somehow make it okay for the other person. They want to over caretake, or they want to micromanage the feelings of other people. And you just can't do that. You need to not do that. Very quick example. I had enrolled in a coaching program. This is probably like 7 or 8 years ago, like $100,000 program, a lot of money. World famous, like one of the most top coaches, world famous coaches. Like a lot of people wish he would run for president. That's how famous he is. So I signed up with his organization, and they literally did not deliver. I mean, literally, like, where's the beef here, as they used to say. There was like literally no delivery. And so 2 or 3 months go by. I'm working with them. I mean, this is not getting better. And I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm tired of being lied to. I'm tired of being ghosted. I'm tired of this, smoke and mirrors and all the stuff that's happening. So this is it. So I was going to ask for a refund, not a full refund. I got a tiny bit of service. I wanted, and I wanted it to be fair to them and fair to me. So I was really clear about the numbers up front in the conversation. And I let the person know that we've been trying to work with what needed to happen. And they asked me to speak to their CFO, so their chief financial officer. So this is a CFO of a very large company. And was I intimidated? maybe a little bit, sure. But I followed these steps. So I get on the call, and this is the third tip, you always lead by asking questions. So I asked him first, tell me, I thanked him for getting on the call with me, and asked him, what's your outcome? What's your outcome for this conversation? And he said, my outcome is to make you happy, keep you in the program, and this and that. And I said, super, thank you for telling me that. Let me tell you what my outcome is. My outcome is to get a refund and to be done with the program by the end of our conversation. And you could feel him just sit back and go, okay, whoa. And we had a very pleasant conversation. I was very direct, and I got exactly what I wanted to the penny. I should have asked for more back, truthfully. I got exactly what I wanted. And he couldn't argue with me because they were in the wrong. So that's a really good example of, when you're clear about what you want and you're not busy caretaking for the other person, you have such a good chance of being successful and having it be fair to the other person as well. I'm not talking about grabbing and taking things. I'm not talking about that. But I mean, he thanked me at the end because I gave him feedback. I mean, it was a very professional conversation. And I think that the other step here, I mean, that's enough to get you going, but you lead by questions and you listen like a coach. And the reason you lead with questions is to find out what that other person is wanting. What is their experience? So I always say, listen like a coach. And it means you're giving them space to talk and to be heard. And if you know what to listen for, and I teach how to do this, you'll actually be able to hear in their language what they are prioritizing, what they value. So then you can speak to that. Doesn't mean you move off your game as far as what you want as the outcome, but you create a very positive experience overall compared to not doing these steps. So I hope that's helpful.
It's very helpful. And giving us an example and our audience an example sets a picture for them. It tells a story and it's very relatable with action items. So thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
As you know, our podcast is Not Your Average CEO. What advice do you have for our listeners about altering their mindset when it comes to the direction of money?
I think it's to be excited about money. And I know for some of you listening, you're like, oh yeah, I'm there. And for others, you're like, oh God, money, I wish it would just go away. That depends on your money archetype, what reaction you have. But I think it's about being excited about money. I look at making money as a creative process. I look at being masterful with money as a way of being, badass. And spicy, it's like, oh yeah, master money. I think that when you are excited about learning about money, one of the mindsets to understand is you're going to make mistakes. There's no doubt about it. I have made plenty of money mistakes, but when you focus on profit, always focusing on profitability and not a razor thin profit. I'm talking about a good chunk of profit. So you have cash there because profit is cash. Let's be honest. That gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility. And even if you make mistakes, you can recover from them. And when you focus on your money values, to go back to values, because as human beings, we operate from our values, whether we're conscious of them or not, we are operating from our values. And so when you are excited about money, when you recognize you're going to make mistakes, but you trust your intuition, do your homework, listen to your gut, focus on your money values, you'll be fine. You will absolutely be fine. You can always make more money. You can always make more money. You can't make more time, but you can always make more money. Always.
Agreed. And I think that a lot of our listeners forget that it's easy to get caught up in money. A lot of people stray from it. So can you explain to us what Not Your Average CEO means to you personally?
For me personally, because I'm definitely not your average CEO.
Yes.
It's always the word freedom. I started in business not knowing anything. If I had known back then how much I didn't know, I would have been too terrified to start. But luckily, the innocence of babes, right? I had no idea. I thought, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited about coaching. I'm going to transform everybody's life with coaching. When they hear about coaching, they're going to fall at my feet and want to work with me. The idea of how do you get clients, I never even thought about it. It just didn't even occur to me that would be challenging, right? And then reality hits. But I think for me, it's always freedom and lots and lots and lots of freedom. So I do have horses. I was raised, my mom worked for herself, and I was raised that you work for yourself, that you do something creative, and that you do something portable. That was really important to my mom. She was a hairdresser for many years. And so having a family business was really important to me. So having my family work with me, which they do. And then I have people who are not family, who are part of my team, but they've been with me a very long time. Like one person's been with me 10 years, one's been with me 14 years. So I have a very small but mighty team. So I think that, to go back to your question, it's freedom, it's being a leader for my small but mighty team. It's really, I pay people very well. I treat them with dignity and respect, and that's how you create all that loyalty. So part of being not your average CEO is loyalty with my team. I don't want to say I demand loyalty, but it is a standard that I set, that I expect loyalty, but there's a reason why I receive it. And it's because of how I treat people. So treating people, because I've been running teams for decades, treating people with dignity and respect is vital to me. And being a leader with what I'm talking about and making it all about my clients. I'm not always the best on social media because I'm not documenting my life, because it's not about me. It's about my clients. It's about the people in our trainings. That's who I care about. And being able to set your own schedule. I mean, my schedule I have a ton of freedom in my schedule. I have very few commitments on my calendar on any given week.
That's wonderful. And thank you again so much, Kendall, for being here. We know that everything that you've shared with our audience has been super valuable. I know that you have some resources for us. We talked about the Money Archetypes quiz. And so can you tell us a little bit more about where we can find you? And then we'll include everything in the show notes as well.
Sure, absolutely. Well, of course, since I have my podcast now, I want you to go listen to the podcast. And that's the Money Coach School podcast.com. You can go there, or you can search for it on Apple or Spotify, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I love podcasts. I think they're so fun. I'm always listening. So that's a place, the Money Coach School podcast.com. And also on my website, kendallsummerhawk.com is a great place just to go and check some things out. And then you'll put the show notes, the link to the quiz. And that's the best place to go. And on Instagram, it's at Kendall Summerhawk.
Perfect. We will include all of that. And thank you again so much for being here. It was so nice to connect with you. And thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Pleasure to be here. My honor.